The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily represent those of the management of KUCI or the UC Board of Regents. For more information about this show, go to kuci.org.
This is Cinéshow with Nima Golbabai at KUCI 88.9 Irvine. Welcome to the second show I am doing on this wonderful channel here at 88.9 Irvine. Before I begin my show, I'd like to ask all my viewers to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can go on Google and search on Cinéshow, KUCI. That is Cinéshow, KUCI. Right now, if you search it in YouTube, nothing will show up for now. But as we get more subscribers, we'll get more popularity. But I ask you to subscribe and follow me on Twitter and Instagram so we can bring this show to more people. As fans of The Shining will know from the music I played, song called Midnight the Stars and You, I will be talking about The Shining today, but I will also be talking about a documentary about The Shining called Room 237, which is a pretty funny experience, and I'll go over why. And I'll just be talking about the director, Stanley Kubrick, in general. So I hope you guys stick around for that. Alright, but let's get into Room 237 first. Just excuse me while I bring up some information about it so I can better speak to you guys about it. Just pardon me for one moment. Alright, so Room 237 is an American documentary film that Rotten Tomatoes describes as mysterious and provocative, and a fascinating journey into the world of obsessive cinephiles. Sounds very creepy and possibly dirty, and I'll get into this. It's by a man named Rodney Astor. Sorry, I can't hold back my smiles because it was such a ridiculous documentary that I recommend everybody watches just because it's freaking weird. Especially if you like The Shining. I guess it's funny. But I guess I wanted to bring this up with you guys because I really love the movie The Shining and I wanted to recommend it all to you. But I also wanted to talk about so many of the conspiracy theories about this film. So I sat down and I watched like 40 minutes of Room 237. And I can say I'm dumber now than I was because this is total trash. So here's basically the premise of Room 237. The premise is a paranoid, frame-by-frame obsession over totally unintended / non-existent subliminal messages in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. It's literally just a bunch of old guys going frame by frame and saying, oh, look, you can see the shadow of the director's face here, and this has a deep meaning, and blah, blah, blah. But the main thing that it's talking about is how there is Native American imagery in The Shining. And this is true. The hotel has a distinctly Native American look. It's on like a Native American like burial ground, I think the hotel is supposed to be. There's pictures of Native Americans on the wall. There's lots of subtext. Now, in reality, a good film reviewer would say that this subtext is clearly trying to say that because this is a supernatural film, it's built on a burial ground, that like the spirits and the mysticism of the Native Americans that came before have haunted this family and this hotel. But this film, this documentary, Room 237, takes this and it's like, oh no, this is a deeper meaning about this genocide that happened. And then they're like, I kid you not, they say that because there's a lot of suitcases in this movie and a lot of Nazis confiscated Jewish people's suitcases during the Holocaust, that Stanley Kubrick is making a Holocaust film when it's not mentioned whatsoever. But that's the type of evidence they give. Like, suitcases in a shot equals this is a movie about the Holocaust. There are Native American imagery, so it must be about a specific genocide. When the actual subtext of the film, when you can say like Native American imagery, would be purely the fact that this hotel is clearly haunted by spirits and it's built on a cemetery of deceased Native Americans of this tribe, and it's clear that's what the subtext is. But this is a total subversion of Stanley Kubrick's work, and the evidence they give for all this like 200 IQ sort of reasoning is like, oh, Stanley Kubrick was really smart, so everything he did had a purpose. It's like, yeah, I agree, but he didn't like have these arduous political messages that have nothing to do with the actual movie just put in, and some of them are conflicting. Like, you can't say this is about the Holocaust and Native Americans. I mean, how can both statements be true, especially if you watch the movie and watch the documentary? But if you want a good laugh, please watch Room 237. It's got a very low audience score. It's got a 55. So I'll read you the first review. The first review from Christopher V says, I feel pretty duped. It's funny because it just proves that you can say anything and visually allure anyone without any kind of trust or faith. It's all relative to the art and the lie. When that's basically true. It's like proposes lots of ideas with minimal evidence, and it's sort of an affront to people with above a certain amount of emotional thinking skills. Yeah. But, I would like to talk about a more interesting conspiracy theory from this movie, and I believe it probably gets into it at the end of the documentary, but I didn't watch the whole thing. But I'll just tell you guys some of the stuff, and if you'll excuse me once again, I'll just bring that up on my screen here. So this is about the moon landing, and it's a conspiracy theory involving this movie. I'm reading from an article here from Entertainment. So it's talking about how, like, there's always been this conspiracy theory that Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing for the U.S. government and NASA because of his movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is this sort of technical masterpiece and just a fantastic film. So people thought that, like, the U.S. government contracted him. But then later he made this movie called The Shining, which I'm talking about today, of course. And there's like all these clues throughout that he may be like confessing to this. So here's the first evidence it gives. The child character named Danny in this movie is wearing a sweater of Apollo 11. So that's the first thing people say. Another thing people say is the imagery throughout the film is like a lot of space imagery, like the carpet kind of looks like landing pads. And also the killer, they say, is the original book. The room wasn't 237, it was like 217, and supposedly Kubrick changed it to 237, and that has something to do with the distance between the moon and Earth. I don't know the actual value. So let's see here. Room 2. Okay, so here from the Indian Express, it says, 1 second, guys. I'm just trying to bring it up. All right, here. It says in the book, The Shining by Stephen King, the room number was 217, but it is widely believed that Kubrick changed it to 237 as the distance between the Earth and the Moon is roughly 237,000 miles. And let's just do a quick. According to Google, it's 238,900 miles, so it's not exactly the same. I'm not saying I believe this conspiracy theory, I just think it's kind of interesting to think about. I also don't think I believe the moon landing was faked. But this is just interesting. Other evidence, according to this website, is they believe that near the end of the movie, Jack, it's revealed as having a mental breakdown, and he just keeps writing, "All work, no play makes Jack a dull boy." And the conspiracy theorists believe that ALL actually signifies A11, i.e. Apollo 11. So this is all very kooky stuff. I don't know any of this to be true, but it's just interesting to think about. But, I think that's enough conspiracy theories for now. I'll give my review of the movie, I think. But before we get into that, I'll play a song for you guys, and we'll get into it. Alright, I'll see you back after break.
The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily represent those of the management of KUCI or the UC Board of Regents. For more information about this show, go to KUCI.org.
Take me home. crickets call, my heart is forever yearning once more to be returning home. When the hills conceal the setting sun, stars begin a-peeping one by one. Night covers all, and though fortune may forsake me, sweet dreams will ever take me home.
Alright, welcome back to Cinéshow. That song was titled Home, and it is a soundtrack from this movie, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Alright, but without further ado, I would like to give my review for the film. And no better place to start than the opening shot of this movie. The opening shot is very different from the rest of the film. It's sort of this helicopter shot over this huge expanse of beautiful land, and I believe Washington it was filmed, or maybe Colorado. It's a beautiful mountainous and cold environment with a lake in the middle, and it's sort of this feeling we're watching Jack Torrance, his wife, and his son drive in their car, or actually we're actually watching Jack Torrance drive to the hotel, and it's as if we're above him and the camera is swaying sort of back and forth. It's as if like something is following him to this hotel, and it's sort of a great moment. Then we're introduced to Danny and, excuse me, I can't remember his wife's name. Oh, Wendy, sorry. Wendy, played by Shelley Duvall. And the child actor is not a famous person, but his name is Danny Lloyd. Alright, and we get to see them at their house, and we're introduced to this problem that Danny is suffering with, the little boy. He has these visions and these flashes of these horrifying events going on at this hotel. For instance, he sees a blood-filled elevator opening and blood gushing out. So quite a traumatic thing for a child. And he passes out, and he's sort of seen by a doctor, in which we reveal that, his father is not explicitly described as abusive, but we are cued into the fact that there was an incident where his father sort of overreacted to something his kid did, and he dislocated his arm in the process. So it's sort of this very early thing we're introduced to in this film, that there's this dynamic where the father can snap a little bit. And we got Jack Nicholson as a father, and he's got these crazy eyebrows. Yeah, so he's a little freaky. But then the whole family goes up to the hotel, and basically the premise is that this family has to take care of the hotel in the winter because it's too costly to keep going, and you know, there's no guests. So, and this is where things sort of start to change. After they're isolated at the hotel, we see all the characters sort of always on their own, and they're less of a family and more like individual bodies in this hotel that's quite beautiful, but there's something like powerful about it. As this is going on, the father, Jack Torrance, gets more and more isolated. His son, Danny, continues to see visions and has episodes that culminate in him sort of being attacked by a dead woman in one of the old rooms at the hotel. And his mother is looking at him, and he's got a bruise on his neck, and his sweater's all ripped up, and she assumes that her husband has attacked her son again. But we know he hasn't, but it's this scene and this deteriorating situation where there's both something going on in the hotel that's supernatural that we don't quite understand at this point in the film, but there's also something more human going on with the family dynamic, and the husband, we're sort of seeing him in a different light now. This goes on, and Wendy, Shelley Duvall's character, reveals to her husband that no, there's actually someone else with us in this hotel. And she says she's a crazy lady who attacked our son. And the husband goes out to find her, and he does find her, but he reports back to his wife that nothing's going on. So he's hiding it from her because he wants them to stay in the hotel and protect the hotel and finish their contract. He's sort of this character that feels a little inadequate in his marriage and his career, and he's always thinking that, like, if he can't live up to his duties, that he's a failure. And he's also using this time to write a book. But as the film progresses from here, the supernatural starts to creep in, and Jack starts to have these visions from the 1920s, the Roaring 20s, where he's like this big shot, and he's at these parties, he's drinking a lot, and we know he's a recovering alcoholic, and there's no alcohol at the hotel, but in his visions he's dreaming that he's drinking. And we keep going throughout this, and he's making contact with these people that died like 50 years ago, and they're previous caretakers of this hotel. And he meets with the one from I'm not sure, I don't know, maybe the 1920s, but it's revealed that this caretaker murdered his wife and kids because they wanted to leave the hotel. So Jack kind of snaps at this point, and it's revealed he's completely lost his mind. And he's got all the stuff he was writing is just nonsense on a page, and he's going absolutely insane, and he resolves to kill his wife and his kid for wanting to leave this hotel. And yeah, the last about 40 minutes of the film is like culmination of all the tensions of the movie. And I'm sort of skipping over a lot because we're running out of time now, but I would just like to say, like, The Shining is a beautiful movie. It's perfectly directed by Stanley Kubrick. It has really slow building tension throughout that culminates in like the climax, which is violent and beautifully directed. Awesome. it's a very iconic film, so you got to give it a watch. It's a horror classic, one of my favorite movies of all time. It's total masterpiece. I'll never forget watching this. The many times I did in the early years. Yeah, this film is an absolute classic, and we gotta wrap up the show right now. But I'd like to say to my audience to please watch Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece, The Shining. I'd like to say to my audience, thank you. And instead of goodbye, how about so long? I'll be back next Wednesday at 4 p.m. because I'm with you to the end of the line. Thank you.
The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily represent those of the management of KUCI or the UC Board of Regents. For more information about this show, go to KUCI.org.